On this edition of Early Look, I'm going to be previewing the UFC 311 main event for the lightweight title between Islam Makhachev and Arman Tsarukyan, the rematch. If you never watched the show before, my name is James Lynch. I'm going to go through a bunch of different stuff here today. Then I'm going to give you my prediction for this fight at the very end. Let me know in the comments how you're picking this fight. What's your prediction? Would love to have a discussion with you about this fight. Again, really, really good pay-per-view to start off 2025 for the UFC on the pay-per-view side of things. I know they have a card the week before. Okay, let's get into a quick tale of the tape between these two. Again, these two fought back in 2019. We'll definitely reference that fight here today. But right now, off the bat, you got Islam, who's 26-1, Arman, who's 22-3, 33-28, 5'10 to 5'7, 70.5 to 72. So see there, Islam going to be a little bit taller. Arman with the reach advantage. Arman also younger than Islam Makhachev. But let's start first with the current champ, Islam Makhachev, and talk about all his accolades. Again, this is a 5-round fight because it is for the undisputed lightweight title. Like I mentioned there, 26-1. He's got 4 knockouts, 11 submissions, and 9 decisions. He is 33 years old, 5'10" with a 70.5-inch reach. So have a 3-inch height advantage in this fight. He's the current lightweight champion. He's had 3 successful title defenses. He's got fight of the night 3 times against Arman Tsarukyan, Alex Volkanovski, and Dustin Poirier. He's got performance of the night 3 times against Charles Oliveira, Alex Volkanovski, and Dustin Poirier. He never had an amateur debut. Islam went straight to the pros in August of 2010. He made his UFC debut in May of 2015. Hard to believe he's been in the UFC almost a decade. And that was the fight against Leo Kuntz. UFC 187, he fought on the prelims there and got the win. Like I mentioned there, he is 15-1 in the UFC. He's got 8 stoppage wins. Some notable wins include Arman Tsarukyan, Thiago Moises, who was ranked at one point. That was a pretty notable win at the time, as was Drew Dober. Dan Hooker, good win that has aged quite well. Bobby Green was ranked at one point. Charles Oliveira, arguably one of his best wins. The Volkanovski wins are great too. His best lightweight win is Charles Oliveira. And then, the 2 wins over Volk. First one was the decision. We'll talk about that a little bit later. Then he knocked out Volkanovski, first fighter to not only hand Volk a loss in the UFC, but also a stoppage loss as well. So that's pretty impressive. And then Dustin Poirier in his last fight. So that was very good. And then his only loss is to Adriano Martins, just one of those weird fights that didn't end up going Islam's way. He's had a bunch of layoffs in his career. We'll go through all of them, actually, because we got some time. So going from Adriano Martins to Chris Wade, there was a 350-day layoff. Going from Wade to Lentz, there was a 343-day layoff. Going from Cajun Johnson to Arman, there was a 266-day layoff. Going from the first Volk fight to the second one, there was a 252-day layoff. Going from Volk to Poirier was a 224-day layoff. And then going from Poirier to Arman, there's going to be a 231-day layoff going into that fight. So again, few layoffs in between his fights, just something worth mentioning as far as Islam's career. And that's a variety of reasons. The UFC wanting to use him for Middle East cards, Ramadan, all types of stuff. So But if you look at last year, Islam did fight twice, just fought the one time last year. But in 2023, he fought 2 times. So hopefully we'll see him a little bit more active this year. That Volkanovski fight that I referenced, the first fight, if you go look on MMA decisions right now, that was at UFC 284 back in February of 2023. 23 media members scored the fight for Islam, only 6 scored it for Volk. So people still felt Islam won. I thought Islam won the fight too. Very, very good performance in that one. Look at his stats right now. Significant strikes landed per minute, 2.65. His striking accuracy is at 59%. Striking defense is at 61%. His takedown average is 3.19. His takedown accuracy is at 53%. His takedown defense is at 90%, and his sub-average is 1.1. So that is pretty much everything you need to know about the current champ, Islam Makhachev. Now let's talk about his opponent, Arman Tsarukyan, one of my favorites to watch in the cage. And you can see there, 22-3 record. He's got 8 knockouts. Actually, hold on. 9 knockouts, 5 submissions, and 8 decisions. He is 28 years old. He is the number 1 ranked lightweight in the division. And he, what was I going to say? He's 5 years younger and he's got a 2.5-inch reach advantage in this fight. So, that's one thing to consider. He's got fight of the night 2 times against Islam and Mateusz Gamrot. He's got performance of the night 3 times against Christos Giagos, Joel Alvarez, and Beneil Dariush. He also did not have an amateur debut, went straight to the pros in September of 2015. Because, they count these as amateurs, but this happened after he made his debut, so it doesn't really make any sense. He is, let me just double check this. His UFC record is very impressive here. You look at some notable wins that he's got. Joel Alvarez is a good win, considering we saw him fight recently. But his best win, well, and then he's got the wins over Beneil Dariush and Charles Oliveira. Those are all very, very impressive victories in the weight class. He had the loss against Islam. That was his first loss. That was actually a short notice fight for both. And it was only 3 rounds, so he ends up losing a decision. I'll get to that fight in a second here. And then he lost to Mateusz Gamrot. We'll talk about that decision a little bit. Well, so if you think about it, Arman's only lost 2 fights in the UFC. They're both fights that went the distance, and one in particular I thought was very close and probably should have gone the other way. Now, he's had a couple layoffs in his career, going from Oliveira to going from Olivier Aubin-Mercier. That was a fight that he got. Going from him to Ramos, there's a 357-day layoff. Going from Oliveira to Islam, because he did have that fight in April, there's going to be a 280-day layoff. And part of that was the whole issue with the fan and him having to do the anti-bullying thing or whatever it was, thing that sort of delayed this a bit. But and also I think he did want to fight sooner, but he had just fought it in April and he didn't. I think the turnaround was going to be too quick for him to fight when Islam fought in New Jersey. So that's something to keep in mind. Okay, let's get to the close fight he had with Gamrot. It's worth mentioning that was back in June of 2022. If you look on MMAdecisions.com, that's where the media can submit their scorecards. Not the be-all end-all, but just give you an idea of that fight. 15 media members scored the fight for Arman. 7 scored it for Gamrot. It's still the only 5-round fight that Arman has had in the UFC. The rest of them have been 3 rounds. So that's one thing to sort of consider in this spot. And then there was the fight with Charles Oliveira where, from some Oliveira fans, you hear, oh, Oliveira should have won that. That was a bad decision. Well, not the case in MMA Decisions. 21 media members scored the fight for Arman on the UFC 300 fight. 8 scored it for Charles. So again, majority felt like the right call was done. Let's look at Arman's stats here. You can see there, significant strikes landed per minute, 3.79. His striking accuracy is at 48%. His striking defense is at 53%. His takedown average is 3.25. His takedown accuracy is only at 37%. His takedown defense is at 75%. Let's go look at the odds. Actually, no, we're not going to look at the odds. Let's talk about their first fight. Let me find it here. So UFC, ESPN 7, this was in Russia. That's part of the reason why they wanted these two to fight, because Arman obviously from Russia originally. So he's from Russia, and as is Islam, so that was a big fight at the time. And it was one of those fights where Arman lost, but people were like, man, this guy's good. He went the distance with Islam. That's pretty impressive. So if you watch their first fight, I think there's a case for Arman winning the first round of that fight. If you go back and watch it, Arman did very well to start, but I think Islam won the last 2. And, again, I think that, even if you look on MMA Decisions, I don't know. We'll see if people had 30-27, but I think most people had that one 29-28 for Islam. So that's why this rematch is exciting. And granted, they're different fighters than when they fought back then. But if you look here on MMA Decisions, everyone scored it. Okay, so they do have it. A majority have it 30-27. Okay, I thought kind of looking at that first fight, you could have maybe given the first round to Arman, but obviously I'm not in the majority with that take. So just wanted to mention that. And then obviously the stats for that fight too. Let's have a quick look at that. Where is it here? So he ended up losing that fight. If you look at the stats in this one, they're close, right? There's not any significant strikes. Islam only beat him by one more significant strike than he had. In fact, Arman threw more. He had 43-20 for Islam. So 70-30. And then, so, this looks like a pretty close fight on paper, right? Even the third round looked like he landed more. Well, he landed more overall. He got 5 strikes to 4. So again, very good chess match in this first fight. The odds tell a different story though for this fight. If you look at right now, Islam almost a 4-1 favorite here. He's a bigger favorite than Umar is over Merab right now. So Islam almost -400 here. He's about -395, and Arman about +310. And on Tapology, similar story. 88% of fans picking Islam, 12% picking Arman. Okay, which way am I going on this one? I think we are going to see the same result as last fight, just adding on 2 more rounds. I think Islam's going to win a decision here. Now, there's a couple reasons for that. First, Arman's only been finished once in his MMA career, and that was in his pro debut. So we're talking, what year was that? That was back in 2015. So basically when Islam came in the UFC, Arman had his debut, and I think his second fight, he ended up getting punched in 30 seconds. So yeah, can't put too much stock into that. Arman's been pretty durable. He did get dropped against, I think it was Joaquim Silva, but I don't think like he's got any sort of liability there. Arman's also never been submitted. If you look at Islam's wins, majority of his wins are by submission. They're not by decision or knockout. So yeah, I suppose if he gets to the ground, he's got a chance. But 12 of his wins, 46% are by submission, and he's fighting a guy who's I think has a pretty decent ground game. I mean, he just fought Charles Oliveira, who I think has also got a very good ground game as well. So I don't think I'm not worried about Arman too much on the ground in this fight. So that's why I'm leaning more decision than submission. I think Arman will be able to get out. And we've seen Arman, he's a fast guy. He's going to be younger than Islam here. I think this is going to be like one of those really fun technical fights that we see every now and then. Like, remember a couple of years ago, the fight with Arman and Gamrot? Like, I think something like that. Like, it's going to just look like a lot of fun to watch overall, without having like a ton of like knockouts or anything like that. The other way that Islam tends to win his fights, 35% of his wins are by knockout, or by decision, I should say. That's 9 of them in his career. That's another reason why I like him by decision as opposed to stoppage here. And look, I think it'll be one of those fights that is kind of going to, I think it's going to end up playing out kind of like the last one, like I mentioned, aside from the result of it being a decision. But I also think Arman will look good in the fight. Kind of like Poirier did in his fight with Islam, where it's like, wow, I can't believe he did that. Like, I think Arman will have moments like that. But I think ultimately, we're talking about arguably one of the best, if not the best, lightweight of all time in Islam Makhachev. I mean, there just has not been any weaknesses really, other than that first Volk fight. And yes, he got finished by Martins ages ago, but that was just one of those anomalies in MMA that happens every now and then where someone will lose a fight. But yeah, I don't think anyone's going to beat Islam. And I'll say this right now, like I think if Arman can't defeat Islam, which I'm predicting in this video, I don't know who does right now. Like, I just think he's so dominant in that weight class that, like, I don't think anyone's going to, Dan Hooker, all these guys, like, I don't think there's anyone that's on the come up right now that is going to give Islam any sort of problems. Poirier moving up would be interesting. I would be down to see that fight. But yeah, I think Islam probably wins the decision here. I think Arman will look good, but not enough to get the win. So that's the way I'm going in this fight. So I want to know what you guys think in the comment section below. What is your prediction? Let me know, and make sure you follow me on Twitter, TikTok, Instagram, @Lynch on Sports. My name is James Lynch. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.